The Translator. Written by Lawrence Rickard. Read by Sharon Horgan.
Hello, I'm Sharon, and I'd like to tell you a story called The Translator, about a very exciting and dynamic person. But sadly, Sabine was neither. She'd been a wallflower at school and had grown less confident through college, and was so invisible at university that her yearbook photo was just a blank space with her name underneath, spelt wrong. But Sabine knew that she could change all that, change the world, kiss goodbye to low self-esteem and kiss hello to a life of glamour, power and success. The life of an international diplomat. She was wrong. After 10 long years with her nose pressed to the grindstone of the diplomatic service, she was still just an interpreter, changing the world in no way at all whilst enduring crap hotel rooms in pretty much all of it. There was no power, no success, just an endless stream of other people's words passing into her ear in one language and out of her mouth in another. Given how this made her feel, it was perhaps unsurprising that Sabine drank, and sometimes, as was the case in that Moscow hotel bar, she drank a little more than she should. It was like all the hangovers she'd ever known were having a reunion in the square inch of temple just above her left eye. It was the sort of hangover you could really do without if you were, say, a key player at a tense diplomatic summit between two global superpowers, which is a pity because Sabine was. Relations between Russia and Britain were not good. The summit had become increasingly shouty and fist-bangy, which was worrying from a global perspective and annoying from a hungover one. Sabine sat hunched over her microphone, wincing at the volume of the British envoy's words before mumbling the Russian equivalent into Mr. Yurlov's earpiece in a slightly burpy monotone. He greeted each translation with an angry growl, which was pretty much how he greeted everything. He was just like that, which was why a sudden lack of growl seemed so utterly bizarre. This just didn't happen. Puzzled, Sabine played back the last few moments in her vodka-soaked brain. There'd been some stuff about missiles and an inspection, and then some more growling, and then the British guy had said, "We can't consider that," and then... Oh, shit. That's not the translation she'd given. She said the Russian for, "We could consider that." Only one word out, but when it comes to global superpowers arguing over missiles, those are exactly the sort of details you don't want to miss. She leaned into her mic, about to correct her error, when she noticed something unusual. The tiniest of smiles on Mr. Yurlov's ever-dour face. She looked across at his British counterpart who, albeit slightly puzzled, responded with one of his own. It may have been nothing more than a vodka-fueled mistake, but it was just enough of a concession to puncture all the bluster and posturing. And when the two men spoke again, the tone was lighter, the volume lower. No longer an argument, just a discussion. And as she returned to her parrot-fashion duties, a startling revelation washed over Sabine. She'd done that. The girl who'd never contributed anything to the world suddenly realised that with a few well-placed words, she might just hold the power to change it. The Franco-Russian summit on the following Tuesday was Sabine's first chance to put her new theory to the test. For the first hour, she did nothing. Well, she translated stuff, obviously, but in the driest way she possibly could. She bided her time, aching with anticipation. It was nearly midday when an opening finally came. "Do I look like an idiot?" screamed the very wrinkly French lady, but in, French. Sabine gave the tiniest of gulps, and in her finest Russian, whispered her rewrite into Mr. Yurlov's earpiece. "I've been an idiot. Could we start over, please?" Mr. Yurlov stalled, utterly wrong-footed. This was even more unprecedented than that time he forgot to growl. He goldfished for a second.
We could try if you could be a little more open-minded,"
he said, but, in Russian. Sabine nodded, looked up at Madame Wrinkles, and switched into French. "You are clearly very intelligent. Perhaps you could suggest a compromise that would be agreeable." Sabine felt a rush. She looked guiltily around the room, half expecting the security guard to pull his gun and shoot her clean through the forehead. But Luckily, this particular security guard was neither bilingual or a psychopath. Instead, the wrinkly French lady did exactly what Sabine hoped she would. She smiled, in a way that did her no favours whatsoever. And Sabine smiled too. It had begun. As one summit merged into the next, Sabine's lies became bigger and bolder. With each smile or nod or handshake across a conference table, her confidence grew. She started swapping shifts, working weekends, whatever it took to fuel her clandestine crusade. It was like a drug to her. And, as with most drugs, she found herself wanting more. First, she learned Spanish. German followed. Urdu, Tamil, Persian, Wu, armed with her natural aptitude and a growing obsession, Sabine soon had a basic grasp of them all. And with a little help from Google Translate, the entire diplomatic world became her oyster. Within a few short months, there wasn't a high-powered summit on the planet at which Sabine was not present, slowly nudging the world into a golden age of peace and harmony. But none compared to this one. The G20 was always big news, but the enduring grudge between the Chinese leader and his American host now filled the front pages with rumours of war. Their 11th hour head-to-head was the greatest challenge of Sabine's career. With only a rudimentary grasp of Mandarin at her disposal and no 3G signal to bail her out, there was no subtlety to today's bullshit. Gone were words like troops, deadline, dire repercussions, replaced instead with love, friendship, and some loose translation of teach the world to sing. She'd gone too far, and she knew it. She had just, without a shadow of a doubt, utterly screwed it up. As she opened her mouth to improvise a feeble backtrack, the Chinese premier cut her off with a loud clap of his hands.
What? Just so.
The president turned her head to Sabine, who, with her face frozen in shock, translated more faithfully than she had done in months.
I accept.
Sabine smiled. While the world watched the last global conflict dissolve into peace, all was, quite literally, right with the world. She had made it so.
Well-planned diplomacy,
came the president's voice, a breeze lifting short bursts of diction from the mumble of the tannoy.
a credit to my hard-working advisors, the result of my personal commitment.
As the crowd whooped and hollered at every line, something occurred to Sabine. Who were they really cheering? World peace was a reality, her work was done. Surely now it was time to step from behind the curtain and share her incredible story with a grateful world, to revel in the glory. And where better to start than with the woman who was currently doing just that? The president was stepping away from the microphone when she heard Sabine's heels clicking hurriedly towards her. A sea of suited bodyguards dived between them, guns aimed. Sabine stopped, all but giggling at the overreaction. No, it's me. I just wanted to talk to Jenny. I mean, Madam President.
What?
Came a voice from behind the suits. Jenny, hi, it's Sabine. Look, I just wanted to clear things up about all the peace. I mean, it's great that you've embraced it and everything, but I think there's been some confusion about our roles in all of this. So I was thinking it's probably time I stepped out from behind the curtain, so to speak. If that would be okay?
If what would be okay?
Came the voice, puzzled. A liver-spotted hand slowly parted the forest of suits, and the president stepped out and looked Sabine squarely in the eye. Sabine smiled. The president smiled back and said 6 words that would change the fate of the world forever.
Honey, who the hell are you?
She felt herself crumple as humiliation flooded her body, flushing out every drop of hard-won pride. She'd saved the world, and this was how it repaid her? With disdain, contempt. And as she stood there, a new plan formed in Sabine's mind. Yeah, she was a nobody, but a nobody with a powerful secret. With world peace achieved, summits had become rather sedate affairs, discussions about trade and conservation rather than bullets and bombs. Sounds good to me, said the Danish ambassador with a smile. Sabine smiled too as she leaned in and whispered in the most perfect Japanese she could muster. He said you're a dick. Canada joined the war on the Monday. Having been told by the Spanish ambassador that his wife looked like the end of a moose, you can't put a collar on. Russia signed up on the Tuesday, following the Swedish PM's revelation that the Soviet army run like girls. And no one's quite sure what the Turkish dignitary said to the Swiss general, but both were bulk buying nukes by Friday morning. In fact, it took just 3 weeks for Sabine's mistranslation to bring the entire world to the brink of Armageddon, compared to the year it had taken to bring it to peace. No more than they deserve, thought Sabine, as she boarded a plane to India to undermine yet another crisis meeting with well-placed insult. Something racist, maybe. And as she sailed across the sky, pondering how long it would take for all this aggressive rhetoric to spill over into actual missiles and stuff, a twitchy Italian general obligingly answered her question by firing a rocket through the plane's left wing. Sabine opened her eyes to see the smiling face of a stewardess. Exactly the sort of sight you'd wish to be greeted with in the aftermath of an air crash, were it not for the fact that the head of this particular stewardess was no longer connected to her body. She looked down at her leg, pinned beneath the twisted seat, at the fire still raging around the stump of the nearby wing, and at the body-strewn wasteland around her. Suddenly, the buckled metal of her seat frame was levered away from her leg. As Sabine wafted the thick smoke, she looked down at the hand that had saved her life. It was the hand of a child, which made sense when she saw it belonged to one. An 11-year-old girl who was now wrapping her cardigan tightly around Sabine's bleeding leg. Given that Sabine had recently condemned the girl and everyone she'd ever known to certain death in a horrific global war, she couldn't help but feel a bit bad. Here was a child who, with nothing to gain, had risked her own life to save a complete stranger's. In that one girl, Sabine saw the world more clearly than she ever had in her life.
God, what have I done?
Sabine knew at once what she had to do. Urgently, she grabbed the girl's arm.
Listen, I've made a terrible mistake. You have to go to the United Nations and tell them everything that I'm about to tell you, okay?
The girl just stared back. So Sabine tried again in Spanish, and then German, Italian, Arabic, Tamil, Swahili, Dutch, Japanese, Hindi.
Oh,
the girl interrupted her with a silencing hand, then held up one finger, furrowed her eyebrows, shook her head.
You have got to be kidding me,
said Sabine. But she wasn't. She just repeated the gesture. I don't understand, she said, in the only language Sabine never thought to learn. Sign. And so the world ended. And the moral of the story? Always carry a pen. Goodbye.